And so, welcome to the Chronicles of Corona. We are now in chapter 14. That means we've been doing these once a week, visiting someone in the land of Corona. Corona being around our entire world as we live with this virus that is the virus affecting our bodies, affecting our communities, the virus not only of COVID, of Corona, but the virus of racism, the virus of poverty, the virus of the militarization in our world, and the devastation that our planet has been suffering. So we started these Chronicles of Corona to talk to people in the world, in the land of Corona. And today I am so grateful that the president of the Spokane NAACP, our own Kurtis Robinson, is with us. And so Kurtis, in the land of Corona, so this came out of the idea of the Chronicles of Narnia, like we're in a land that's different than we've been in before, and we have an evil or to be overcome. So you are warmly invited to come up with your heroic name in the land of Corona. We talked with a chef from New Orleans, and so she is quarantine queen. And we talked to a young person in California, and he's the Lego ninja. And my daughter, when she was in Germany, she was the legend from afar. So you can think about if you have a heroic name that you would take for yourself. And you can let me know what that is before we close out. So the first thing to ask you is, how is life in your part of this land of Corona?
Well, that's a loaded question, right? Very simply stated, but it really speaks to the multiple levels of impact that this has had, and the impact that it's had in exposing a condition that we know is already, that was pre-existing before Corona ever hit, which is the issues of systemic racism and oppression that have been, constantly flowing through the undercurrent, and in many ways also, the overreach of our American structure. For me, it's been a tough thing. And I'm not the only one, right? It's like, it's a freaking, pandemic, worldwide pandemic. So it's been tough for a lot of people. It's been tough for the planet. For me, myself, I originally experienced the death of my mother almost immediately after the wave really hit. I got a call on a Thursday. She was sick and she was gone on a Sunday. And and then I lost a brother, a native brother, a month after that, diagnosed with cancer. Told he had 6 months to live, and he was gone in a month. My youngest daughter was also diagnosed with cancer. This is all in like a 30-day period of time.
Oh my gosh, Kurtis.
Wow. Yeah, and I'm smiling about it because it's just like, what can you do?
Yeah.
What can you do but make sure that, we're being very grounded and connected, for me spiritually, right? And I know that for you also, but also connected and processing the truth about how we got here and what here really is.
Yes.
The land of Corona has been very challenging for me. It's also been, as one of the sayings I've developed, my own personal statements is invitations abounding. Right?
Interesting. Say more about that. What does that mean? Invitations
abounding. Yes. So in every obstacle, there's an invitation, right? And when we talk about, scriptural principles, of which I know you're well versed in, in Christianese, the canonized text, that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind, right? And there's when fear starts coming, and stuff starts happening, I'm not going to talk to the fear about the fear.
Okay.
Right. So I'm going to have a conversation. It's like, okay, I acknowledge the fear. You're in that space and you're there. And it's like, but I'm going to the source. I'm not going to the fear is not the source. The fear is a manifestation. Right. So I'm going to the canonized text to point me back towards the source. And the source tells me, the Most High tells me that I've not given you that spirit. The one that I've given you is of love and of dunamis, that power. And I believe it's sophramismos, right? If I can pronounce it correctly, that sound mind, right? So agape's dunamis, sophramismos. And I know I'm killing that one, but
doing fine, Kurtis.
But it's like really, when we're human beings we're spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around. And so that's the lens that I've got to view this through, and that I get to view it through, right? And so that challenges like a lot of the dynamics that have been the undercurrent and the overarching things that have been coming at this American system for such a very long time.
Yeah.
And so for me, I've had to really lock onto the opportunity and the obstacle in this. Is like, okay, here's the obstacle, death. It's been real. I'm not the first one to experience, a loss. But what's the growth opportunity for me? Where is a channel and a pathway through this that I can be more connected, not disconnected?
Interesting. So this is your invitation. When you talk about the opportunity as an invitation.
Yes.
So when each one of these crises come up, we have the invitation to change individually. But right now, we have the opportunity to change. We've had many, right, before,
right.
To make a change in our society. Will we take this opportunity? We're being given a big opportunity here. How is that? Is that what you mean when you talk about that opportunity?
The invitation and the obstacle.
The invitation and the obstacles.
Yeah, absolutely, Jen. Absolutely, Reverend. And and so one of the things that the Spirit spoke to me a long time ago was, I'm going to do a work in you as I do a work around you.
Ah, okay. All right.
So there's the invitation. As things are happening around me, there's an invitation for a work to be done in me. Because even if I just break that down to non-spiritual principles and I just come down here to, just flatline, in this world kind of stuff, we've been dealing with systemic racism and oppression for, over 400 years.
Yeah.
Right.
I put it back to the doctrine of discovery, which, we're talking the 1400s, right?
Right.
And that needs to be rescinded. It needs to be burned. I'm not sure, but it goes back 600 almost years.
Yes, ma'am. And, but yet the resiliency of our populations to still be here after all that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so there's an invitation. How do we become more resilient, not less? And then how do we hang on to that and capture that resiliency, expand on that, and turn that into not just surviving, but thriving?
Yeah.
Right? So there's an invitation. How do we thrive in an environment that is predominantly set up to racialize and oppress us?
Exactly.
Right?
So the answer is?
Well, some of it, right, I'm getting little bits and pieces. Some of it is to really embrace that internal external piece, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that as these things are coming at me, as these tragedies are occurring in my own personal sphere of experience, that I have an opportunity to be more connected, not less, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have an opportunity to remember and cherish my loved ones, and remember the lessons that they taught me, and be grateful for the experience that I had of them in my life, and to be very mindful, very prayerful about everything that's going on. And, to really, because one of the things that happened with me is because my mother was one of my oppressors. She was one of my traumatizers. And so, I had a lot of flashbacks.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like having flashbacks like, oh, I'm in like the zone and I'm having a flashback. It's like, no, I'm remorsing, I'm going through the grief of losing my mother. And in that grief and processing that grief, there's the flashback. Oh, yes, I remember that. But to actually capture that moment in memory and make sure that internally I have not, if there is a contract that I have in me, that there's some unhealthy piece of my personality that's still kind of locked in that zone,
Yeah.
to actually hold space for when that flashback comes, when that memory comes, and go, okay, yes, I do remember that. Yes, that was hurtful, harmful, tragic, traumatizing, all that kind of stuff. Yet, was there a place in me where, even though I couldn't deal with that well as a child, as that happened, am I still operating in that space right now? Right? So am I operating in that unhealed hurt in this day and age, in the Kurtis that I am now? And so is my personality built on an unhealthy dynamic still existing within me? And if so, let's just unravel the contract. Let's take care of that thing and let's heal that. And a lot of that for me has come through, it is the representation of the Christ. And it is flat out, bottom line, no holds barred forgiveness.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, that's exactly what you're describing, a lot of people think is forgiveness means, oh, it didn't exist, but forgiveness means it totally existed.
Yep.
And it was totally painful. It's just, I'm not going to live my life in revenge for that which happened. But it's still totally true. It's still, you don't forget. Nowhere in the Bible does it say to forget.
Right. That's what's up. That's what's up. And then how do we hold the juxtaposition of the remorse for it happening, the mourning for it happening, the pain of it happening to us, and yet also compassion for the person that did it.
Yeah, that compassion, when Jesus dies on the cross, he says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they've done.
Yes.
St. Stephen does the similar. Jesus, into your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think sometimes there are things too big for us to do the forgiving, that we've got to turn it over to God.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense. That sometimes we have to say, God, you take this, because I'm not going to carry it and let it destroy my life, that anger, that hurt, that harm that was done me. But this is too big for me to do. God, right. You do it.
And, Reverend Jen, if I may, for me, the key to the kingdom in that, right, has been that, that what you articulated, forgive them for they know not what they do, right? Mm-hmm. That's been the piece. It's like, my abuser did not know what she did.
Yeah.
So how can I blame you for doing something that you didn't even really know what you were doing? And just be, and just be remorseful that is even a thing that I had to deal with. But that's where I go, hey, I don't know how to, like you just talked about, Father, I don't know how to deal with this. They didn't know what they were doing. I definitely didn't deserve this.
Yeah.
Help me reconcile that within myself.
Yeah.
And I think that brings me, I feel, closer to to a manifestation of the heart and mind of Christ more than anything else.
Yeah. Sometimes they do know what they're doing, though. Sometimes abusers, and that's where repentance is needed, because so often people will talk about going right from forgiveness to reconciliation, and that's not the direction to go. Forgiveness doesn't mean we're reconciled. Forgiveness means the one forgiving can move on in their life. Yeah. The one who has done the harm needs to repent. And that doesn't mean saying you're sorry. That means showing by your actions over a long period of time that you're trustworthy again to the one that needs to repent. And it sounds like your mom never got that.
Well, I think she did on some level, and it's just another long story. But several years back, I just knew I had to go see her.
Yeah.
because she was on the West Coast when this happened. She was on the West Coast when I went and saw her. She was on the West Coast when she passed away.
Yeah.
So I just saved all my money up, hopped on a plane, and went and spent a month with her where she was at. And I just stayed in space with her and just shared time with her. I went into the room where I was staying at, and I prayed and interceded for her almost every waking minute. But I would not go talk to her and go Bible bash her.
Yeah.
I would just go spend time with her, but next thing you know, we started going through this process where she started talking about the remorse that she had about us as kids, and then her issues with how she was treated in the church body and not being able to reconcile that because she was an abused person as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's that cycle, right? And so one thing that I was really kind of grateful for, and not just kind of grateful and eternally grateful, was that she reconciled in that time. She reconciled her relationship with the Most High through the Christ in that time, and she absolutely changed. Then I got to witness it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So beautiful thing. So I agree with you about how tough it is to, feel that and perceive. And I don't disagree with that wholeheartedly, or even contextually, right? That some of these people know, right, what they're doing. But here's my challenge space with that. And this is where the Lord challenged me on that. If they really know, like they wouldn't have done it. So they really don't know.
Oh, I see. That blinded in temptation, that blinded by power or greed that they can deny to themselves.
Yeah, and that if there was like that if that knowledge, like they might have got it like from the neck up, they knew, right?
Yeah.
But in their heart, they didn't, and for multiple reasons. So like in the case of, which is a lot of cases of abusers, they have been abused themselves, right? And it's that perpetuation of the cycle, because for that cycle to stop means they have to come to terms with how they built their personality up on that unhealed hurt and that process of abuse still holding space within them, right? And there was their invitation, but that's also where they made their choice, right? So instead of choosing to heal and go to the source to heal that space, they capped it, built on it, and then went into operation in the rest of their existence from that place. And the perpetuation of that process ended up becoming an abuser.
Right. A poison that just keeps getting more and more poisonous. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
That speaks to our society too, doesn't it?
Yes.
We have a poison that just keeps getting more poisonous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with that, and so kind of bringing that kind of like full circle to the invitation, I've been watching and striving to make sure that I'm kind of cued in on what trying to, on what the Most High is inviting in this, and I mean, there's all kinds of scripture that kind of points to, but for some reason they're not really coming to my mind right this second. But I've done the footwork and have dug into the Word extensively, and what I've seen is that and it kind of reminds me of like the Job principle, right?
What's that?
So even though Job lost so much.
Oh, Job. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Job principle. Even though he lost so much, his ending was better than his beginning. In that trial, and that thing could do nothing but without permission from it's like, you can do this, but you can't take his life, right? So there's the authority, right? So I'm not going to go when stuff's happened to me. I'm not going to go to that stuff that's happening and go, hey, what are you doing? I mean, I'm going to look, I'm going to examine, I'm going to process it, but I'm going to the source, because that one's in charge of what's going on, not that stuff, right? And there's the invitation.
Yeah. And Job does go to the source. People who talk about the patience of Job haven't read Job, because he's not patient. He calls God to court. He says, I am innocent, and all the trees and the mountains and the sky will declare my innocence. And so meet me in court, God. And because you, God, are a good God, you'll admit it too. And that's what happens. Job
Right.
doesn't deserve what happens to him.
Yeah.
And God says, you're right.
Yeah. And what the message that I really got out of that was that, you know, he learns a level of humility that maybe before he did not necessarily possess. Right. And at least there was that invitation.
I had a professor, I think you'll appreciate her view on this. When I studied Job, she said, Job is the question and Jesus was the answer. So just hold on, because I know that may not be comfortable to some who don't follow this Jesus. But what she said, the professor was telling about when you read Job, Job says to God, God, you don't know how hard it is to be human. You don't understand what it is like to live in these bodies. And God says, Job, you don't understand what it's like to be God. I've got to birth the wild animals and take care of the forest and take care of the stars in the universe. You don't know what it's like to be God. And there's this end of Job, which is kind of a quick, it's a jarring switch where Job all of a sudden gets it, but we're not quite sure what. Anyways, this professor had said, remember Job said that, you don't know what it's like. And that, so God said, you're right, and came to be among us to know what it's like. I don't know, but when you mention Job, that comes to mind. Does that resonate with you at all? In that,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you know, and when I think about, you know, in the land of COVID, right? So back to that, right? You know, it's like we have invitations abounding in this because we've been operating as a human community in some tracks that are very unhealthy and absolutely unsustainable. They are harmful not only to ourselves, but to each other and to the stewardship that we have been given over this planet. And we have, in so many different tracks, grossly mishandled that. But it's all interconnected, right? It's all interconnected. It's all interrelated. And so when I say, you know, when I deal with the invitations abounding and then the personal work being invited for me, as a work is being done around me, I can see some of those tracks and some of that landscape. But I always come back to, you know, and it's the difference between being self-aware and self-centered, right? So striving to be self-aware but not get self-centered.
Yeah.
Right? And that there is an opportunity in everything that I face, every Jobian dynamic that manifests in my experience for me to be further connected in the foundational principles that I know in operation in this universe, not the worldly ones. And so, you know, to grow my faith, to heal my hurts, to expand my understanding, to you know, and it's the John 15 thing, right? I am the true branch, my Father is the husbandman, right? I'm a branch. That's my job. I'm not the Holy Spirit fruit inspector.
I also, as I hear you say these things about healing your hurts and your responsibility to be on that journey, I hear Dr. King's message that it's my job to help you be the best you, because I can't be the best me till you're the best you, and vice versa. That there's this interconnected, that that we are indeed our sister, our brother, our siblings keepers. And until we are all free, then none of us are really free. Until we are all healed, none of us are really healed, if that is the right wording for it.
I absolutely believe that. And I think, you know, there's one of the invitations, right? So part of the game that's been afoot here, that it is the sole thing that we have bought into and that we have been generationally programmed as well. So we've got these generational traumas and these generational oppressions, and yet we've got these dangles of like, oh, but if you do this, you can achieve this, and if you do this, we can get status and all that kind of stuff. But what profit if a man, if he gained the whole world but lose his soul?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So how do we become very soulful in these Jobian dynamics that we're facing as individuals and as human community, realizing that, hey, part of the problem is we have been grossly disconnected from each other. And yet now we're having to be disconnected from each other. So how do we capture that opportunity to be more connected while we're having to be disconnected, and engage in what that does in those places where we've actually had those identity contracts with being disconnected? Oh, I was actually, oh my gosh, I had opportunities to be connected before, but I like, nah, I don't, but now I really want to be connected. But doesn't that also mean, isn't there a pathway to go, hey, but what about when you had the opportunities to be connected and you left those aside? What about that space operating within you? And how are you going to take that now, own that that's there, remove that piece, hopefully through some divine guidance, right? Because we know what happens when we keep trying to do stuff ourselves. Here we are. But through some divine guidance, remove that and replace it with something so much more healthy and better.
Yeah, yeah. Owning our past and creating a new future with a level of awareness of the traumas.
Yeah. And Jen, and I'm just going to keep hammering this, it can't be in me unless I agree with it.
Okay. That we need to make the responsible adult choices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I know you have children, and do you have one daughter, or do you have more daughters or sons?
So I have 2 stepdaughters, and I have 2 biological daughters and 1 biological son.
And how are they doing through all of this?
They're challenged, right?
Yeah.
I wish I could just go, oh, COVID's tough, but we're just prospering, and we're leaning in, and we're pushing through. Not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah. They're having a hard time with their schoolwork, 2-person household. So, the younger, my stepdaughters is who I'm referring to, they're very challenged in this space. They're young girls of color. And so they ran into a lot of challenges with the disproportionality stuff in school, as well as, being bullied, and not always bullied by the dominant culture, sometimes bullied by the ones who say, you're not black enough, or you're not brown enough, or your hair looks stupid. Right.
Yeah.
So they carry that out of that now into this COVID dynamic.
Right.
And they're like, hey, I never wanted to go to school in the first place. You think I want to do schoolwork now? Right?
Right.
So that's a thing. My oldest daughter, my firstborn daughter, she was the one that was diagnosed with cancer. So she went through it. She had, I believe she had a hysterectomy. So she's been processing it. We talked several times last week. We talked at least 3 times, and then we touch bases again on Sunday. And she's like, hey, Dad, I'm wiped out. Can we just talk another time? I was like, sure, love you. Stay well, But, and she's a believer, she's embracing the invitation for her. And that's what we talk about.
Yeah.
Right. So she's getting her work done in her. My 19-year-old is in Arizona, and she's part Navajo. I touched bases with her 2 days ago. She says she's doing okay, but she's been out marching. And so I sent her some money so she could get some masks and some water.
Right.
Right.
Oh gosh, the Navajo have been so decimated, or the virus, I don't know if decimated is the right word.
Yeah.
Inundated by this virus.
Yep. So, and we've got plans to circle back around again when she can, but keeping tabs on her. And then, youngest son, he's 2 years old. He's going to be 2 years old next month. But he's coming into this world under these conditions. And so I just try to get him outside, and every chance I get, I take him outside and we run and we play, and, you know, and just really just kind of embracing him. Like the other day, and it's on my Facebook page, he figured out how to catch a football. And I mean, he's like, I'm throwing it, he's catching it. He throws it back. I mean, and not like throws it back like all kinds. He's like, boom, back at you. Throw it back at him, catches it. Boom, back at you. He did it like 3 or 4. We did it like 20 times, right? But I'm like, finally, I'm like, hey, film this, because he was just like, he just went from 0 to catching it, you know. So
Wow.
it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So the journey through COVID has been one incredible ride, and we're not even partway, maybe a quarter way into this.
Right.
We're just still at such the beginning of it. And your leadership here in Spokane, I thank you for that. With everything going on in your family and in your life, thank you for your leadership. I really hope that through this COVID experience, we do embrace each other as human beings more. When we see each other in places like this, where you're in my home and I'm in your home, kind of at the same time. So are there any other words that you'd want people to know, things that people could be doing to make life better post-COVID, or through, even now, as you mentioned, your daughter, you send her masks so she can be out there protesting. What would your advice be to people who want to be part of the change?
Well, definitely to embrace the process, you know, the internal process that they're being invited to experience, because it's great to go out and protest, you know. And one of the invitations I had to really receive in the midst of all this, like, I didn't want to go out. It's like, I don't want to play. I want to take my toys and go home. I'm mourning my mom. I'm mourning my brother. No, I don't feel like marching. We've been dying all this time. This is not anything new for POCs. It's just now it's making, you know, this whole big media kind of thing, but we've been dealing with this the entire time, you know. So I wasn't anything, but then it, you know, it wasn't. So I had to kind of wrestle with that within myself. There was my invitation, right? It's like, okay, Kurtis, so who are you? Do you really mean what you said that you would do what you needed to be done in this community? And it's not what you want to do most of the time, it's what you don't want to do. And are you willing to sacrifice your right to that space to be who you said that you were? Right? And to really manifest that, walk out that manifestation and be the brand, you know, and and get your fruit pruned, right? So you know, that is, you know, kind of some of the most foundational stuff, is that, you know, these invitations are abounding for all of us. And most of the time it's going to be doing the one thing you don't want to do. Because in that space of not really wanting to do it, if it's that place that, you know, okay, hey, I'm being invited to do this, and I kind of got this, I should go do this, but nah, you know, that place, right? Because in that place are going to be some issues that are being invited to be reconciled and healed in the obstacle of the manifestation of the obstacle that you're having to face, that you don't want to deal with, you know. And that's the real work, because, you know, we can change policies and we can change police systems, but if we don't change our hearts and minds of the populations going in and doing these things, then we're going to recreate what we've always had. Yeah. And I think, you know, we're really getting a very real dynamic invitation and opportunity for things to shift. And
do you see that in the continued, so when you talk about the internal shift, because I keep seeing, and maybe it's happening with the protests. My experience of protests is they're a good beginning, but they're not the end. So there's another piece. And maybe it's coming from the testimonies. I know people are very, very moved as they hear the testimonies at the protests. Can you see in your crystal ball the next step? Or is it not here yet? Is it to continue with the direction we're going now? Or again, do you see, I know with the Poor People's Campaign, we've got the march, the virtual march on June 20th. And that's a piece of changing, gathering together, making change, systematic change. And when you're talking about internal change, do you see a way for those pieces yet together, or it's still just the fog out there and we're on the journey, we're not there yet, don't know quite what it's going to be?
I have a couple thoughts about that. So number one is we are definitely moving into uncharted territory, or at least being invited to. We're being invited to go to a place that is at the core of the founding ideals behind this nation: freedom, justice, equality for all people. Never been manifested at the level it's supposed to have been. It's been for some people, but not for others. You know, really owning that that's where we're at. Not just the POCs owning it, because we've been having to live with the fact that that's what's been done, but as an entire nation, as an entire human community, owning that and going, hey, this is what it felt like, you know, for us to experience. This is the personal impact, the generational impact in the same space that we're hearing from you. Hey, I have been woefully ignorant because of the generational privilege that I have, that I'm currently benefiting from, that I didn't neither ask for nor did earn, based on the blood of your ancestors. Let me tell you how that feels, right? And really having that real human view and dialogue based on that reality, you know, and the dualities of that reality, but bringing that into the same space. And that is, you know, that is the kind of some of the uncharted territory. I mean, I can see that's kind of what's next, right? And then the actions based on it. I do have a couple of things about that. Is our system is not being invited to reform or reconstruct. No. And I got that a while ago. It's never been invited. It's being invited to transform. So one of the things is that, you know, it's not reconstruction, not reformation, transformation.
Transformation. What a perfect place to end our time together. Thank you. Thank you. Hold on just a moment. So that was our chapter 14 in the Chronicles of Corona. So very, very grateful to have Kurtis Robinson, president of Spokane NAACP, speaking to us about his experience in this land of Corona. So thank you, and may these words, these meditations, this time we've spent together be healing and motivating in your life in this land of Corona. Until next time, may all peace and good be with you. Bye-bye.